too complicated. Because if it's too complicated, people are just not gonna care. Why would they care about like 15-step onboarding process just to use something that is actually pretty hard to use in its core? We wouldn't be talking about Pudgy Penguins. We wouldn't be talking about Pengu. We wouldn't be talking about Solana if it wasn't for Bitcoin 100%. And Satoshi Nakamoto. Bitcoin really kickstarted all of this. You can really see that the Bitcoin community is very sticky. Even though like everything is dumping, everything is going down, but there is this hardcore group of people that are still here, which is super bullish to me.
Welcome to the Chinsanity show, powered by 852 Web3. It's nice to have you here, man. This week, Jan, right? It's been a busy week for you, right?
Busy week. No, I'm super excited to be here with you guys. As I said, first time in this area of Hong Kong.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Your studio is dope, so I'm just super excited to chat with you guys today.
Yeah, amazing. So how was it, the Bitcoin Summit? I know you were one of the organizers, right, in it.
Yeah, so I organized it, and this is the second year that we have done it. We did it for the first time last year. It was called Ordinals Asia, but this time we rebranded to Bitcoin Summit because we believe that the brand is more appropriate to what's going on in the Bitcoin ecosystem, because last year, 2 years ago, it was mostly about ordinals and runes and these meta protocols. But now when you look at how the Bitcoin ecosystem has really grown, it's appropriate to go broader than just, okay, ordinals. Like there's so much more. There's Bitcoin L2s, there's DeFi apps, there is these protocols, there's like people building side chains and whatever, you name it. And so I think from that perspective, we thought that, okay, it's appropriate to put it, on a different name, on a different trajectory, because I really think that this is something that we want to keep doing. We'll obviously see what the demand is going to be in the future, but this has been the second year. It has been pretty crazy. We have grown in terms of amount of people that came.
Wow.
And also we did a lot more side events throughout the whole week, and people loved it. So if there is a demand for it again next year, we're going to do it again next year. And, hopefully we can bring some more energy into the Bitcoin ecosystem, right?
Yeah,
That's
100%.
the whole purpose.
Yeah. Speaking of energy, right? I'm sure you saw on your timeline, a lot of people saw this week. There's a dance that went viral during the Bitcoin Summit. Yeah.
It was funny. Yeah, it's cool. I saw it. I didn't participate in the dance because I was like running around and I was doing everything at the summit, but I saw those guys were doing it. I definitely didn't expect that it's going to go viral. It went viral. It's good. Bitcoin Summit all over the place. I don't care. People think it's cringe, whatever. I don't care. It's all about the fact that people having good time and all of those people, who did it, who participated, well, great people, great communities from not only actually in Bitcoin. I saw a lot of people like the Pudgy Penguins guys were there and stuff. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And do you guys have the Bitcoin Summit just during Bitcoin Asia, or is it in Vegas as well? Or
no, it's only in Hong Kong because we're based here. We understand the market the most here, and we can actually organize it because it's very difficult to organize big events, right? Like logistically, put everything together. Obviously, you need to get a lot of partners and sponsors, but also like you have to have people on the ground that can go into the venues and figure out the venues and logistics of the venues and FMB and whatever. And so we only for now do it here, but we'll see. I really believe that for Bitcoin ecosystem or any ecosystem to grow, you need very vibrant community. And of course, it's important to have it online. But I think to some extent, it's even more important to have it offline, to allow people to meet face-to-face, because when it comes to investments, when it comes to business development, partnerships, deals, all of those things are usually done in a easier way when you meet somebody in person, when you actually have relationship and like, I know who you are and like, do we vibe
that
together?
Face-to-face kind of communication.
Zoom, of course, works and you can do now business with people around the world with just a few clicks. But at the same time, that real connection really matters. And so, again, as long as people are interested in this stuff, we're going to keep doing it because I really think it's important to make sure that it grows, the ecosystem grows.
Yeah, you mentioned things about like the Bitcoin ecosystem and stuff like that. And to be honest, I'm not as familiar with stuff that you guys do, like Spark, Stats, but I heard a lot, I saw a lot and stuff. So what is up with like building on Bitcoin? Because I think a lot of times people think Bitcoin, just the coin, go up, go down, but there's a lot of things, that are built too, right? Stuff that you guys are doing.
100%. I think you need to look, let's say 3 years back, right? Because up until then, Bitcoin was really just about, hey, let's buy Bitcoin and hold it, never touch it, never do anything with it. Maybe you would transfer 10 sats to your friend via Lightning or something, right? And that's how you would onboard them to Bitcoin. But that was really majority of the things that people are doing by that time, right? But then Casey Roramore, he created Ordinals protocol. And it was really during the craziest bear market. It was pretty interesting timing. But during the craziest bear market, people saw, hey, you can now do NFTs on Bitcoin. Right?
What year was that? That was early 2024?
It was, I believe, it's 3 years ago. So it's like 2022, end of 2022, something like that.
Got it.
And I think Casey has been working on it for longer than that. But like the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, that's when people started to notice. And you actually saw the community rallying around that idea. Of course, again, like for those who are really familiar with Bitcoin, we have had NFTs on Bitcoin for a long time with Rare Pepe's, Counterparty and stuff. But like this is when I would say the broader crypto ecosystem started to notice. I guess it was good timing. It was like maybe people are bored because there was nothing going on in the bear market. And so they were like exploring new things. And so a couple things really happened at the same time. And it really gave birth to this new ecosystem of Bitcoin season 2, as we like to call it, or this Bitcoin renaissance, where, not only you can do NFTs, but people started to do tokens, like BRC20 tokens, you probably heard about it, that was built on the top of the Ordinals protocol. And then...
Is there were runes as well?
Runes came after. We saw the BRC20 craze, and Casey saw it as well, and he was like, like this is cool and all, but it's not very efficient, so I'm going to do a better and more efficient way of doing it on Bitcoin. That's where Runes kind of came into play. And that was like, the launch of Runes was April last year. And so Runes have been around for, I don't know, more than a year now, but it's still very nascent and very young ecosystem. But basically, Ordinals kicked everything off. And so we had Ordinals, we had tokens on Bitcoin, BRC20 tokens first, and then we had this crazy explosion of different meta protocols, different Bitcoin L2s, different, side chains and DeFi conversations and stuff like that. And now you also have like these lending protocols around DLC and like, this is quite technical. People are not probably going to understand these terms very well, but it doesn't matter. What really matters is that like suddenly out of nowhere, you started to see hundreds and hundreds of builders now realizing, we can actually do some cool shit on Bitcoin. So let's experiment, let's do stuff, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah. Because I've heard from other people, right? It's like, like Bitcoin's, the tech is too, I don't know, they said too old and stuff like that. But it seems like, people are building, right? Like,
I mean, you could say it's old, but you could also say it's just simplistic, right? Like the simplicity is power because, Bitcoin really, we could debate this, right? There's many different
people.
A lot
of maxis.
There's a lot
Bitcoin,
of people
ETH, maxis,
with different opinions, right? But like, Bitcoin started all of it, right? This crypto craze. We wouldn't be talking about Pudgy Penguins. We wouldn't be talking about Pengu. We wouldn't be talking about Solana if it wasn't for Bitcoin
100%.
and Satoshi Nakamoto, right? And so Bitcoin really kickstarted all of this. Bitcoin actually was a lot more flexible at the beginning because Satoshi Nakamoto actually later on removed some of the functionalities or these opcodes, as we call it, from Bitcoin because they didn't know at the time, what it would actually do. Is it safe? Is it secure? Maybe not. Let's remove it. But Bitcoin was able to do a lot more back then, but obviously nobody really did anything because everybody was just like, hey, this is just cypherpunk stuff. Let's just try to build something. But obviously the vision is to replace the entire financial system, right? Because you don't have any intermediaries. Like nobody can shut it down. Nobody can really steal your coins as long as you have your keys, not your keys, not your crypto, right? And stuff like that. And so that was the purpose if we really simplify it. But then later on, certain things got removed from Bitcoin. And so then Bitcoin kind of became, you couldn't really do much, right? If you wanted to do smart contracts, if you wanted to do more stuff, that's why Vitalik started Ethereum. Because he was like, I would love to do these things on Bitcoin, they tried with like colored coins and like many other things back in the days, but it wasn't really efficient. It wasn't really flexible. And so they were like, okay, let's start a new chain, right? And so they started a blockchain specifically for smart contracts. And then like more and more chains kind of like came to be. And like now you can see like, I don't even know how many chains we have, like 3,000. I don't even know,
it's
right?
crazy. It's
and
crazy.
So,
and L2s and on top of that.
Yeah, 100%, right? And so that's kind of like, the story of Bitcoin and like, why like people even today say like, oh, you cannot do much on Bitcoin. And it's true. Like Bitcoin has its limitations, right? And so the way you kind of go around it is like you come up with these things like Ordinals, like meta protocol on the top of Bitcoin, where, you basically put some data on chain and then you use some indexers and, you use wallets like Xverse to track everything. And then you can say, okay, we have assets on Bitcoin, right? If you take it a step further, people are building these L2s. They can be EVM compatible. They can be completely new side chains, whatever. And so people are building these things, experimenting. How can we actually unlock the value that sits in Bitcoin? There's like $2.5 trillion that sits in Bitcoin. Yeah. How do we unlock it? How do we allow people to borrow stable coins against it? How do we do some Bitcoin staking, Bitcoin yield? And that's really what this entire Bitcoin renaissance is about, because we ultimately want to bring more utility to the Bitcoin users.
Yeah. Definitely like what you said, like Bitcoin is OG, right?
Yeah, it's OG.
It's OG, and without that...
It's the safest, the most secure. It has been around since the very beginning. Nothing really happened with it. No hack, nothing, no exploits.
Right.
And it's Bitcoin, man. Like, if like you go and you sit at your dinner table and you mention Bitcoin, probably your mother have heard about it.
Of course. I feel like Bitcoin's like synonymous with crypto, especially with the normies, right? Like Ethereum, okay, some people, they know. Solana, probably not, right? But Bitcoin, I mean, it's crypto.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I think the opportunity is so massive, right? Because really, like Bitcoin, not only it's the OG, not only the Bitcoin dominance is like 62%, which means that like 62% of the entire crypto market is just Bitcoin.
62%.
Yeah, 62 or 60. Crazy. I don't know what is the number now, but like we went obviously from 100%.
Right.
Then we went super low, and now we're going up again, because obviously people like, we have these treasury companies buying Bitcoin, and nation states are getting into Bitcoin. And so we're talking about like serious like liquidity, even with these ETFs and stuff. And so, Bitcoin is the OG, is the biggest one. It's the most secure, most decentralized. So from my perspective, like it's a no-brainer that this opportunity is so large and so big. However, yes, you're right. We have to deal with these limitations. And so we have to work around them. We have to push through, we have to push all the way to the limits. And also we need to wait for potential upgrades, right? That's also something that is being discussed in the ecosystem a lot these days. It's like, are we going to get a soft fork? Are we going to get additional opcode that is going to allow us to build better bridges or, better L2s on Bitcoin? It's going to allow us to improve Lightning, and stuff like that. Are we going to get some incremental improvements, which already happened? Like there, I will just simplify it. Like back, maybe 6 months ago, like putting data on Bitcoin would have certain limits, right? Like how much data, like how many kilobytes, and this limit has been like removed or like increased much more recently, like 2 months ago. And so that also allowed people that are, utilizing these protocols or like these features to like build better solutions, for L2s or for like settlement to Bitcoin. And so, the improvements are happening. It's just, yes, it's Bitcoin. Nobody wants to fuck with Bitcoin, meaning that they don't want to make mistakes. And so those improvements are happening very slowly, but steadily.
Yeah. And one thing that got really curious when you mentioned too about ordinals, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like how I even got into Web3 was through NFTs, right? And stuff like
that. Me too.
Oh,
man.
you too? Okay.
Me too. I'm in Bitcoin right now, but I first heard about Web3 when like Bored Apes were going
Yes,
to like
yes.
100 ETH or whatever, because all of my friends were suddenly, oh shit, like the opportunity in Web3 is so awesome. And so I started looking into it. You know?
Yeah. Did you get one that time? Or
I didn't, because
Yeah.
I didn't have any money. I didn't have any ETH. You know, when I start seeing it, like it's
ETH.
120
What's
ETH.
ETH? I don't know what that is.
Yes, and so
Yeah.
like I of course didn't get one because I didn't have like $200,000 just to buy a JPEG back then.
Yeah.
You know, but it really obviously caught attention a lot of people, and that's what brought me here. You know, at the first place.
Yeah. And speaking of Ordinals, right? Like I feel like early 2024 is when I really heard it everywhere, right? There's shows.
Yes.
I know you host the Spaces, Ordinal show, and
it was
stuff like that.
it was the bull market of Ordinals,
Right. So what? And I think recently we haven't heard as much of it, at least from mainstream or things in my cabals. But like, I was curious, like, what is? Yeah, what's some of the Ordinals right now and stuff like that?
Man, again, from my perspective, it's very clear that there are cycles, right? So it's never just straight up.
Right.
You know, we see it in NFTs in general. So it's like cycles that repeat themselves, that like, you know, you have this meta and that meta and that meta. And so like, you know, it's obvious that it's not going to be straight up. And of course, people talk about Ordinals and people talk about NFTs when it's going up. When it's going down, it's just the degens that really like believe in it, that are still here, that are tweeting about it.
Hardcore people.
Yeah. But like most of the people don't give a shit. They would rather do something else.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's very obvious that we have not had the greatest time in the past 12 months in Ordinals. You know, it has been kind of down only.
Is it because of the market or is this?
Of course, it's the
vibes
market.
or-
It's the market. I think the vibes are great. I mean, the Bitcoin community is really unmatched. You know, like I have worked, you know, not only in crypto, but I've built various different communities over the past decade, and you know, you can really see that the Bitcoin ecosystem community is very sticky. Even though like everything is dumping, everything is going down, 90% down, like you still see thousands of like hardcore, like the community
We see
builders.
people dressing in wizard costume.
Like, you know, and they come to these events, they're onboarding their friends, they're educating their friends about Bitcoin and this and that. And so, you know, I think obviously we don't have a hype cycle right now. We don't have a bull market in Ordinals. And so it's obviously harder to just like keep pushing every day. But there is this hardcore group of people that are still here, which is super bullish to me. And so obviously there are cycles. Right now the cycle is not really great. But even now, when you look at top NFT communities, if you look at obviously ETH is number one, because it's the biggest, like, you know, in terms of the collections, the art and everything, that is kind of like the established go-to chain. But Bitcoin is number two. Or maximum number three, kind of fighting with Solana in terms of like volumes and stuff. And that to me is like crazy bullish, right? Because like, yes, you have all the other chains, Monad and Avalanche, and they will have like one collection or two collections from time to time. It will be hyped up because there is an airdrop and this, but it usually just dies down immediately after. And, you know, Bitcoin, we have had this ecosystem around for the past 3 years, let's say. And we're number two, maximum number three, you know, if like there is some hype in Solana. So like, I think it's fucking great, you know? And of course, we need to keep growing. We need to onboard more people, and we need to just, you know, educate people that like, hey, this is Bitcoin. This is not going to go away. Like that number 25 chain that you're farming right now, it's cool. Make some money, man. Go for it. If you know how to do it, degen, make a couple $100,000, make millions of dollars, but you know it's going to be irrelevant in 6 months from now, most likely. But this is Bitcoin, guys. So to me, the fundamentals are unmatched.
You know, one thing you mentioned is interesting about it's Bitcoin, even when it comes to, we always mention, you know, the mass adoption, right? We always say, okay, when we mass adoption, but like, I feel like Bitcoin's a perfect way where normies, where we call 100% people to come in, because again, when they think crypto, they think Bitcoin.
And that's happening because Bitcoin is the asset that they read about in newspapers, that they hear people talking about it on their favorite TV news show, whatever, be it CNBC or be it some like morning coffee with Joe, right? Like, you know, Bitcoin is probably the only asset that is going to be talked about on these shows in the mainstream media on regular basis, especially when it's going up or when it's going down like crazy, right? Because that's when like, people, okay, like let's talk about it, right? And so from that perspective, 100% you're right. Also, we now have the ETFs, right? So basically almost anyone can buy it. Like I have Revolut app in Europe. I can buy the Bitcoin ETF, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And easily, like, I don't even have to like care about the custody of my assets. I, as a Bitcoiner, I would prefer to just hold the Bitcoin instead of the ETF. Right. But I also understand that there are people like my brother who are not so savvy. They don't really want to deal with that stuff.
They don't look at the red and green candles every day like us.
Yeah. And also, like, the problem is that, like, what if they lose the key, right? Or this, like, then everything is gone, because it doesn't work like a bank where you can, like, change your password to internet banking just because you go to the, bank office, right? Right. And so those are definitely problems that we still have to solve as an industry if we want to make sure that people really hold their assets and it's fully on chain. I really hope that's where we're going to get. That's what Xverse is working on. Like, we're trying to make it as simple, as easy to use as possible. But again, we need multiple iterations, and it's going to take time. Right now, it's seed phrases. That's what people are used to. Yeah. In the future, it's going to be some MPC. It's going to be some, like backups with iCloud, whatever. Maybe there is going to be a better technology very soon. And so we will get there eventually, but like, it takes time.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Xverse, right? So you guys are primarily a wallet for Bitcoin, right? And runes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we are the wallet, or I would even say the platform for everything Bitcoin and Bitcoin Fi. So we like to say Bitcoin Fi because there is much more than just Bitcoin as the asset and then Ordinals and runes. There's so much more, right? With all these L2s and side chains and these scalability solutions, programmability solutions. And so we position ourselves as the go-to platform for everything Bitcoin Fi. So we support some of these L2s already. We're working on partnerships with these other L2s because eventually, the story or the positioning or the strategy is very simple. Bitcoin is the number one asset in the world. As we mentioned, $2.5 trillion. And so there is going to be a bunch of Bitcoin L2s. And because the ecosystem is so massive, like, you have to be 100% focused on Bitcoin. Like, if you're this multi-chain and cross-chain wallet, that's cool now because there is so many chains that are cool here and there. But eventually, if we're right about Bitcoin, if we're right about the future of Bitcoin, we want to be the go-to place. And that means you have to focus 100% on that Bitcoin ecosystem. Because if you get distracted by Solana and Monad and Avalanche and this, like, I just don't believe that you can really build something unique because you're just jumping from one thing to another, even though on Bitcoin only, in the Bitcoin ecosystem, there is going to be crazy amount of things, and you have to kind of navigate it, you have to experiment, you have to work with these partners, and you have to kind of collectively figure out what's going to be sticky, what's going to be the use cases that people really want to use, because people will try to build 500 different things, but likely maybe 12 of them will stick. Like, I was just having a lunch with one of our partners and my friends in the ecosystem, and we're just discussing, like, the number one thing that I want to be able to borrow against my Bitcoin. Like, that's the use case that we need to have. And we need to be able to do it ideally in a non-custodial way, fully trustless, and it needs to be scalable, and it has to be integrated into the entire ecosystem so that I can just use Xverse, my wallet. I have some Bitcoin, I borrow some stables on it, and I can go and buy a coffee or I can, maybe, repay my house payment, or something like that. And so that's just an obvious product market fit, but it takes time to build a solution in this way.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you about the use case, right? And people are probably wondering, it's like, okay, Bitcoin, I hear about it. It's the coin, right? It's this currency, but like, what other products are built on top of that? Like you just mentioned.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, ultimately, like, the real useful things that you can look at and say, this is a mass market thing. There's going to be only a few things. Like, like, just look at your real life. Like, do you use 500 different apps just to, like, live your life? Probably don't, right?
Probably
like,
don't,
you probably have a couple favorites. You do some shopping, you pay for your electricity bill, whatever, and then, like, you have some banking services, whatever, and then, like, you get around with Uber or something. I don't know, like I'm just, like, kind of trying to put things into perspective. Like, of course, there is going to be things that are very degen, and, like, there is going to be certain niche markets. And, of course, we need to have all of it in a sense. We need to have NFTs. We need to have meme coins because people love fucking gambling, right? People love to do that.
That's the human nature of people. Yeah.
So we're gonna have all of those things,
Yeah.
no problem. But then when we look at the mass market, it's really the basic stuff. Like, how can I have some asset. I have Bitcoin, the best crazy asset in the world. I don't want to sell it, but I want to be able to use that liquidity, right? So I need to borrow against it, and then I can spend it in a real life. I can make other investments. I can do some leverage stuff. Maybe I'm pretty advanced. So like I want to get some leverage to get even more Bitcoin if I'm right, about my trading and stuff. And so like, these are the basic things that we need, like stables, lending, borrowing, then maybe a credit card, that's something that, is becoming more and more popular.
Right.
But I would love to have a credit card, not only to like earn me more Bitcoin, but like to be able to like, manage my kind of all in all finances, and stuff like that. And so like all of these things are being built, and we just have to bring it to Bitcoin somehow because it just makes so much sense.
Yeah. Do you see like in the future where people actually going to pay, like you said, a cup of coffee or something using Bitcoin versus I've heard recently with stables and stuff like that?
I personally, I would probably not use Bitcoin itself, right?
Okay.
Because again, like on one hand, you have Bitcoin maxis. Yeah. And, I am not necessarily Bitcoin maxi in that sense.
Interesting. Okay.
But just look at the user experience, right? If I have Bitcoin in my Xverse and I want to go buy Starbucks, for instance, or some other coffee, it's going to take 15 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes for that confirmation to happen, right? So you cannot
phrase, password, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, but also the blocks are slow, right? So like for that store to receive that Bitcoin, it would be just like, hey, it's going to take like 15, 20 minutes, right? That's not feasible.
Right.
And so for that, you need L2s. For instance, for coffees today, people will use Lightning, right? So they will basically quote unquote like send their Bitcoin to another address, or they will bridge to the Lightning Bitcoin, and then they can transact very fast. And if they want to come back to L1, they can make another Bitcoin transaction wait those 20 minutes and come back, right? And have that security of the Bitcoin chain. And so that's something what people do today, but I really think stables make sense, right? Like, so what I would like to do, I have some Bitcoin. I don't want to necessarily spend the Bitcoin, but like, let's say, okay, Bitcoin is 100K, 110K today. So I'm gonna say, okay, I want to spend some Bitcoin. Maybe I think it's gonna go down, so I'm gonna stable up a little bit. So I'm gonna turn some of my Bitcoin into stables, and I can spend that, or I can just park it there and wait for the price action and stuff. So I think having stables on Bitcoin with some of these meta protocols or some of these L2s, that's would be a killer use case for me, for instance.
That makes sense.
So that's what I would use, because otherwise right now what I have to do, I have Bitcoin, I need to bridge it to Ethereum, then I'm going to get USDC, USDT, and like, again, it's possible, but it's too complicated, right? So ideally you want to do this in one click in your Xverse wallet.
Yeah. Just like Apple Pay, right? You click two buttons.
And don't think about it. What happens underneath, what is in the background, the regular user doesn't even have to know. They shouldn't know.
Yeah. It's interesting because like you look at like a country like El Salvador, right? They've been really pushing Bitcoin. And I haven't been there before, but I heard like some places accept Bitcoin, some here and there. And it's really interesting to see, like, I think I was watching a documentary, like some places it could accept, it's really easy. Some places like doesn't work. And I guess that's like the first I think I've heard of countries using Bitcoin, as a medium of exchange, and
I think on a country level, I think that's definitely the only or one of the very few examples. They have definitely been at the forefront, but also like I would say like it's not like heavily used, right? Like I wouldn't say that like everybody transacts with Lightning and Bitcoin in El Salvador, right? And I think again, the reason for that is that it's not really that user friendly. And that's the problem.
And that's kind of the improvement you're saying.
100%. Like, you're seeing. Like you have to kind of like, instead of like pushing people, again, this is really just user experience and like how you would like, or how you would build any kind of startup. Like you don't really want to make it too complicated because if it's too complicated, people are just not going to care because people have so many other issues in their day-to-day life to deal with. And why would they care about like 15-step onboarding process just to use something that is actually pretty hard to use in its core, right? Because it goes up and down in value. And so like maybe I onboard you to Bitcoin, even to Lightning in El Salvador. And then, you want to buy a piece of bread. And today I could buy 2 breads and tomorrow I can only buy 1 bread because it went down a little bit.
Yeah.
Like normal person is not going to be able
yeah.
to deal with this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
For us, it's okay because we're like so locked
into
in.
It, right. Yeah.
We're so into it. We plan in advance. We know that these things exist. But for a regular person, they're just going to be like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't want this shit. Please just give me US dollar. It's just reality, right? And so, at the end of the day, again, like we need to work on simple onboarding. It should feel like the experience they're used to from their day-to-day life. So let's say in Hong Kong, like, you guys use like, I don't know, Alipay or PayMe or something like for day-to-day transactions, like just scan a QR code and you're ready to go. Like ideally you want to have that kind of experience with Bitcoin. And then we add the stables to it. Ideally, like I just read, I think it was at the Bitcoin Asia, like Tether, right?
Yes,
Tether wants to bring USDT to Bitcoin
That's
with one of those meta protocols,
That's
right?
crazy.
Let's see. I mean, I am very bullish on this because I think it would be freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Tether has been making these announcements for the past 3 years and they haven't really done much. So, like I want to give them benefit of the doubt because I know that it's hard because we're building in this space like every day. It would be better if we partner up on that, for instance, and 100%. We're talking about it with them, but we'll see where this goes. But, it's hard to build it, but if we can do that, it's going to unlock very different utility and very different kind of market that we can bring.
What do you think are some of the hurdles like currently? Is it the tech or speed or it's just
It's definitely the tech. I think at the end of the day building on Bitcoin is really difficult. Example is Xverse. Like we have been building this product. Our founder Ken, he started this company like maybe 4.5 years ago, something like that. I've been with the company for more than 3 years now, but we have been really like day to day building this product for the past, let's say 4.5, maybe close to 5 years now. And, it's not perfect product yet because like it's really difficult to work around these like Bitcoin limitations, but we're getting there. We're now releasing some tooling for other Bitcoin builders. So we have like these Xverse APIs where if you're a Bitcoin builder or if you're a builder that wants to come to build on Bitcoin, you want to build some app, we give you all the data that you need, all the Bitcoin related data, all the different, APIs, data sets, whatever you need. And that simplifies stuff so much because when we came here, when we were starting to build around Ordinals and Runes, none of that existed. Like it was all like we had to piece 15 things together. And if you didn't understand Bitcoin, you would be like, what the hell is this? This is too complicated, right? And so we're simplifying it and we're not the only ones. Like, Xverse is pushing really hard, but there's so many other companies in the space.
Like I've heard you guys the most, like even in the timeline and stuff like that.
We focus on it. That's the number one focus, right? Like for me personally and for Xverse, the whole team, like we just focus on Bitcoin. And so like, we're very active, obviously. That's why, hosting Bitcoin Summit, being at all these Bitcoin events, trying to connect the dots around the world. And so, I'm glad that, you can see the fruits of the work because, we only focus on Bitcoin and we want to push the Bitcoin ecosystem forward. We may make mistakes sometimes. We're going to bet on a wrong L2. We're going to bet on a wrong protocol. That happens because there's just so much going on. Doesn't matter. I think we need to go through this experimentation and we have to just keep pushing just to figure out what's going to be the thing that sticks.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time here, but again, really appreciate you being here.
I enjoyed this, man. Like, we should do it again.
For sure. Yeah. But before I have you out, I'd love to hear like a prediction. What is your... It doesn't have to be right or wrong answer. And when we were at Bitcoin Asia, I asked everyone this, like, it doesn't have to be right or wrong, but what is your prediction for the future of how people are going to use Bitcoin or in the ideal utopia scenario and stuff like that?
My prediction, it's, I wouldn't even call it a prediction, right? Because, we're trying to make that future happen, right? So we're kind of building that future. So it's really more of a prediction. It's conviction that, again, Bitcoin is going to transform the entire financial system as we know it, right? Because it's a truly decentralized, let's say, even peer-to-peer currency, right? If you read that original white paper and that's kind of at the core. So we're transforming the entire financial system, but for that to happen, for us to be able to onboard people and, again, provide utility beyond just like exchanging value, like we have to build the entire ecosystem around it. And we have to maybe even utilize the security of Bitcoin for all the other chains in the future, right? Like I could very easily imagine that there's going to be so many chains, maybe even Ethereum itself or Solana, and they could at some point decide, okay, we want to settle everything back to Bitcoin and make sure that we leverage that ultimate security, that security budget, that security that Bitcoin provides, right? And so I think that's really the future that we're heading towards. I don't know, again, how long it's going to take. It's probably not going to take 6 months, of course, because this stuff takes a long time and like a lot of people to build. But every 6 months, we make massive amount of progress. And so I'm very, very confident and very positive that we're heading in the right direction. And so ultimately, like, we should see that states could be run on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that states are just going to buy Bitcoin and put it on their balance sheet. That's just one aspect of it. Like, it's cool. Like, companies and states should do it, but that's just one aspect. But then you have the aspect of being able to, borrow against it again, some stables, transact, have some credit cards, have this stuff and then transact day to day, like go and buy that coffee and go and buy that house, with all the gains that you made on Bitcoin. Maybe just do it in stables and like then repay it, and you will never lose that Bitcoin at the first place, right? And so I really think that that's where we need to go, for even crypto to be successful in a sense, right? Because like there's like so many of these new narratives, but like we need to solve some of these underlying issues for day-to-day life. And I think Bitcoin is well positioned to be the backbone for all of this.
Yeah. When is Bitcoin going to be in 1 million? What was your prediction?
Man, I will tell you that it's definitely going to 1 million.
Yeah.
I don't know when.
Yeah.
I'm pretty bad at making predictions. I'm always like arguing with my friends. Like, they think I'm too bearish. I was actually hoping that we're gonna see 150K by this time at Bitcoin Summit because we're kind of going in that direction.
Right.
And you see, right? Like we're at like 110 now.
Yeah.
So
which is crazy because before, like, we were predicting, okay, when's it going to go to 100K?
100%.
And now we were mad, it does not go to 150K, which is crazy to think still, right?
That's exactly, you're putting things into perspective, right? Like, I remember in 2017, that when Bobby Lee was saying, like, it's going to go to 100K, when, like, Bitcoin was, like, I don't know, 4K or something,
That's
or 20K.
Crazy.
And he was saying, no, it's going to 100K. Everybody said he's fucking crazy,
Right.
And look at it now. Like now 100K is basically the floor. Yeah. Everybody thinks it's never going to go below 100K.
Right.
And so I am 100% convinced it's up only from a long-term perspective. Of course, there are going to be swings, maybe 20, 30%, like I don't know, like it just happens because it's a very volatile asset or crypto in general. But man, like, I was actually on the show, I said that, by the end of this year, like we definitely have to be at 150K, And right now, because we're going down, it kind of feels like, like it's actually a good price target, right? Yeah. When we're going to go up and we are going to be at 120 next week, people are going to be like, oh, this is so bearish, we're going to go to 300K. Man, I don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
I just know that long term we're going up. Yeah. And what I care about is I want to see more people building in Bitcoin. I want to see more people using Xverse. I want to see this ecosystem overall just booming, growing, and flourishing. That's what I care about. I don't really care about the price. The price is just a great kind of indicator that like kind of shows that, hey, we're right. And like people care about this, and like it's awesome because of course if price is up, people are gonna be they're gonna be FOMOing. Okay, well maybe I should do something with Bitcoin. So price is, to this extent, it's important. But for me, day to day, I don't really look at the chart. I don't give a shit. Because if I was just looking at the chart every day and like, oh, why is it not 150K? I will not be able to do anything, right? So I don't really care about that.
It's crazy we're talking about 100K. Like
it's crazy.
But last year, I think, before the election, it was like, what, 60, 50?
Man, it was like 69, I think, last year. 69? When we hosted Ordinals Asia last year in May.
Yeah.
I think we're around 69K or 60K.
Yeah.
And so look, like 1 year and we're basically double.
Yeah. And we're complaining about 100K now.
Yeah, we're complaining about 100K because we got used to the fact that it's like going crazy up. And these treasury companies are buying billions and billions of dollars.
That's crazy.
And, again, I think that trend is going to continue. You know, I just don't know exactly the price target, what's going to happen here. Like, you know, a lot of my friends were saying like, you know, by the end of August, we're going to be at 200K.
Yeah.
You know, and it didn't happen, but it doesn't mean that, you know, they were wrong in terms of the direction it's going. So, you know, again, I don't really care. I don't spend too much time on price targets.
Right.
I think what really matters to me is, are we growing as an ecosystem? Are there cool builders that actually want to build fundamental stuff, not just the pump and dumps and this that happens all the time, but like, are there people, smart people that actually want to build cool shit? And if I see that happening, I will remain bullish. If I don't see that anymore, if I only see people just like doing some lame shit or just like some pump and dumps, then I will be like, okay, maybe we failed, you know? But for now, I see a lot of smart people coming back to Bitcoin, investing a lot of resources and effort, building on Bitcoin. And as long as that's true, I remain ultra bullish on just everything.
Yeah. Well, Jan, I feel like we got to have you maybe a part 2. Definitely.
Let's do it.
I never got back to your background yet, but again, really appreciate
we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Really appreciate you being here, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of Hong Kong.
Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.